The year is 1958. A tragic disaster has forever changed the course of a football club and has become the heartache of a nation. From the ashes of unimaginable loss rises a story of resilience, rebuilding, and eventual triumph. This is the incredible journey of Manchester United, from the Munich Air Disaster to their historic European Cup win a decade later. On the route home from their win in Yugoslavia against Red Star Belgrade, they boarded an Airspeed AS-57 Ambassador that belonged to British European Airways. It was operated by Captain James Thane and his co-pilot Kenneth Raymond. They took off from Belgrade Airport with a total of 44 people on board and landed at Munich Airport in West Germany at 1:15 p.m. for a refueling. After refueling, at 2:19 p.m., it was instructed by Control Tower that it was ready for takeoff. However, the co-pilot Raymond decided to abort it after Thane noticed the engine didn't just sound right. 3 minutes later, they tried for a takeoff again, and within the next 40 seconds, it was called off once again as the engines were running on an over-rich mixture that was causing too much acceleration when the throttle was pressed. After this second failure, the plane was docked temporarily, causing a delay, and the players had to stay at the airport during that period. In addition, it had begun to snow heavily, and it was slowly becoming impossible to get back home on that very same day. One of the star players, Duncan Edwards, used a telegram to transmit this message to the landlady. "All flight cancelled, flying tomorrow, Duncan." Captain Thane informed the issue to the flight engineer Bill Black, who was stationed at the airport. Bill advised that the plane should be kept in overnight for repairs, which would mean that they would have to fly tomorrow. However, Thane was determined to leave on the very same day to prevent the team from missing a day of training for their next match that was to be played against Nottingham Forest. After plenty of discussion, Thane decided to make a third attempt to take off, hoping that this time it would be successful. This time, he planned to push the throttle very slowly, which would mean the plane would take off later than usual on the 2-kilometer runway. By 2:56 p.m., all the players and staff were boarded and strapped in, and by 3:03 p.m., the third attempt to take off would initiate, where they soon passed the V1 phase, meaning they could no longer abort and had to force a takeoff no matter what. They needed 119 knots to take off. The knots would slowly increase as it fluctuated near 117, and then suddenly drop to 112, then 105, and after that, catastrophe. The plane slid off the runway, rammed through the airport's fences, and its left wing exploded after it came into direct contact with a house. Following the wing's contact, the tail broke off and hit a fuel truck in a barn, causing an even bigger explosion. Once the burning plane finally came to a stop, it was only a matter of time before the plane itself would entirely explode from fuel tank ignition. The pilot, James Thane, and 2 stewardesses would be the first to leave through an emergency window. The goalkeeper, Gregg, regained consciousness and aided his 2 teammates, Bobby Charlton and Denis, who were strapped into their seats, as well as multiple others who were aboard the aircraft. The disaster would forever stain Manchester United's history, as out of the 44 people on board, 23 people died, 19 were injured, and overall 21 survived. Amongst the fatalities, 8 Manchester United players were dead, including the young gem Duncan Edwards, who had survived the initial impact but had later succumbed to his wounds 15 days in the hospital. Aside from the players, the club's secretary, the chief coach, the trainer, 2 journalists, and the co-pilot Kenneth Raymond had all passed away. 2 key players amongst the injured suffered gruesome injuries to the point where they would never be able to play football again. The manager was severely injured, with a split chance of making it out alive, but fortunately, he made a full recovery 2 months later with a toll taken on his mental state that led to depression. As these harsh effects of the aftermath would settle in, Manchester businessman Louis Edwards took over as club president and began the financial rebuilding of the club. As Busby would recover, His assistant Jimmy Murphy became the caretaker manager and was forced to play reserves, which led to an overall collapse of the hard-earned glory and reputation the team had obtained before the incident. During Jimmy Murphy's short tenure, the team would win 1 out of 14 games, with their only win being against Sunderland, and ended up placing 9th at the end of the season. However, despite these setbacks, they didn't let this tragedy completely devastate them as they pushed forward in the European Cup to where they got to the semi-finals and won 2-1 in the first leg against AC Milan at Old Trafford, before going on to lose 4-0 in the second leg at the San Siro Stadium in Milan, marking the complete end of this tragedy. As the club began to try to get back on its feet, they were offered support from many clubs. Real Madrid offered to loan Alfredo Di Stefano, in which they would pay off half his wages, raise funds for United, and allow injured players free recuperation at their facilities. Aside from Real Madrid, Liverpool offered 5 loan players for the season. Bishop Auckland offered 3 players on short-term contracts, and Bayern Munich created a monument to pay tribute. After 2 months of hospitalization, Matt Busby was at last discharged. He decided to take a relief trip to a town in Switzerland called Interlaken to escape from this traumatic experience that nearly costed him his life. During this, he suffered from depression with nothing but horrible thoughts flowing through his brain, and the motive to give up on everything that he had worked for on the past 13 years, until his wife said something that would quite literally, by no exaggeration, be a pivotal moment in Manchester United's history. She told him, "You know, Matt, the lads would have wanted you to carry on." And that flipped a switch in his head, as after that, hope and motivation overruled the depression in his body. And soon, he decided to return to the steering wheel at Manchester United. After watching the club lose the FA Cup final 2-0 against the Bolton Wanderers at Wembley, in front of a roaring crowd of 100,000 people, he was back for the next season where he regained full control of his managerial duties since the accident, and was driven by only one thought in his mind: winning. Throughout the early 1960s, Busby was focused on rebuilding the team, where he signed players such as Paddy Crerand and Denis Law, who at the time was the most expensive transfer in British history, as he was bought for £115,000, which in today's rate would amount to him being approximately £3 million. Despite these efforts, it had brought United's seasonal position even lower, as they had placed 19th in the 1962-63 season, but yet somehow won the FA Cup final 3-1 against Leicester City at Wembley. It was truly a bizarre season, but it proved that improvements to the club were still required. During the next step of actions that Busby would take to improve the club, he felt that the nickname of the team, the Busby Babes, didn't feel right anymore, so after some inspiration from the nickname of the English rugby team Salford Red Devils, he decided to change the nickname of Manchester United squad to the Red Devils, which is still used commonly to this day. This would mark a completely new era for the club, as they would later go on to accomplish great achievements. In 1961, the scout for Manchester United, who was Bob Bishop, was looking for talent and happened to be at an under-16 match in East Belfast, where he spotted a kid that had completely shocked him more than anything he'd ever seen in his entire career of scouting players. This led him to instantaneously send a message to Busby, where he told him, "I think I found you a genius." With this immense interest, the kid was immediately scouted and given a trial at the club. His name was George Best. This kid would go on to later become regarded as not only an absolute legend for the club's history, but also, well, regarded as one of the greatest players of all time due to his immense skillful dribbling and aerobatic goals that will leave audiences stunned. After his trial went successful with flying colors, he was officially signed as a Manchester United player by the chief scout Joe Armstrong, and by the 14th of September 1963, he made his professional debut against West Brom. By the next season, he had become a starting player, playing on the wing alongside the talented Bobby Charlton and the enthusiastic Denis Law. With this legendary trio, they would instill terror in their opponents, as they had earned the nickname of the United Trinity. and caused a surge to the top of the table where they finished second, and in the following season, they ultimately placed first, obtaining the league title as well as a very impressive record maintained that season as they had won 13 of 15 games in a single run. The dream of winning the European Cup was now even closer than ever before. During this ascending journey, the United Trinity would each go on to win the most prestigious football award, the Ballon d'Or. In 1964, Denis won the Ballon d'Or with 46 goals. In 1996, Bobby Charlton won the Ballon d'Or after winning the FIFA World Cup. And finally, in 1968, George Best won the Ballon d'Or with 32 goals. They were truly the dream trio of their era and created history with each season that went by. During this, they would also win the league title again in the 1966-67 season after going unbeaten in their last 20 games and making a 6-1 statement against West Ham in their last match of the season. With this incredible performance, they proceeded once again to the European Cup, where it would be a cup certainly never forgotten in United's history. The cup started with an easy 4-0 win against Hibernians and then a challenging 2-1 win against Sarajevo. Proceeding to the quarterfinals, they faced a Polish side, once again resulting in a 2-1 win for United. Upon reaching the semi-finals, they were against their toughest opponents by far, one that stopped them multiple times from winning the European Cup, the Spanish giant Real Madrid. With the team playing to their maximum of abilities, they had won 1-0 in the first leg at Old Trafford and were to continue this in the second leg at Real Madrid's home stadium, the Bernabeu. However, before this match could even arrive, a bigger problem arrived first. Denis suffered a knee injury and was unable to play the next match. With this setback, the Red Devils were being dominated 3-1 by Real Madrid, and when it reached halftime, this meant that in order for United to win and advance to the finals, they would have to score 2 goals in the next half and not concede any more goals. With the pressure at its highest, the whistle to start the second half was blown, and both the teams played desperately. After aggression from both sides, David Sandler for Manchester United managed to prevail with a goal in the 73rd minute, which led the aggregate to 3-3. All United needed was one more goal. The team went beyond their limits, constantly pressing for a goal, and finally, in the 80th minute, after an assist from George Best to Bill Foulkes, the job was finally done. The whistle was soon blown, and Manchester United had won 4-3 on aggregate. It was a great relief for the team to finally beat the team that stopped them in prior matches. With this win, Manchester United were in the finals against Benfica. On the 29th of May 1968, history was soon to be made. The match against Benfica was played at Wembley Stadium in London with a crowd of roughly 92,000 people in the stands. With a nail-biting first half played, the score was 0-0, and everything depended on the second half, in which Bobby Charlton opened the floodgates with a goal in the 53rd minute. However, Benfica equalized that in the 79th minute, and things were getting tense, as time was running out and the match was entering into extra time, which means that there was no room left for mistakes. Out of nowhere, in the 92nd minute, George Best shocked the entire world after dribbling past not only the entire defense, but the goalkeeper as well, and finished the goal right through the center of the net. But it wasn't over yet, as 2 minutes later, a young 19-year-old Brian Kidd had scored a header, and then in the final minute of the match, at the 99th minute, Bobby Charlton had put the game to rest with an incredible shot into the top left corner. At last, the whistle was blown. They had won 4-1. United were, for the first time, the champions of Europe, as well as the first English club ever to win the European Cup. After everything they went through, the challenges, the financial efforts, and most importantly, the Munich disaster, they had finally made their dream come true. They were champions of Europe, and they were living the happiest moments of their lives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Manchester United's history, their disaster, and comeback, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see more content like this and help support the channel grow, check out our Patreon, link for which will be in the description below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.